guys, this is Amanda Kelly with this art called Life. So today I'm going to dive into a pretty heavy, weighty topic, death anxiety, or otherwise known as fear of death. So it's a pretty big one, and it has, for understandable, obvious reasons, been a topic, whether you think of it in these terms or not, it has been a topic that has been weighing over not just our society, but the entire world for the last year and a few months, basically, with this pandemic that's been going on, COVID, and all the attenuating situations that have come along with it. There is this shroud, this overhanging notion, this overlaying fear of death that has basically crippled our society, crippled our world. And fear of death is a very normal thing when we're confronting life-threatening situations. This isn't to say that it is, all bad or anything. It is normal. It is part of the human existence. It is part of the human condition to be scared of death, because we are in these bodies that do not last forever. Our bodies are mortal. So it is very natural to have a fear of death. It is a little healthy to have a fear of death, but there can get a point to where it is maladaptive, where the fear of death is crippling us and we are not actually living a full existence. So I'm going to dive into what it is, why it can get to a point where it's maladaptive, and also crucially, a few steps that we can take to address it and mitigate it, manage it, maybe get rid of it. I can't say I have zero fear of death, but I have to say that, I'm also a cancer survivor, so I have a lot of nuanced perspective on death. I have faced death pretty head on, and I really don't fear it anymore. Where I'm at on my journey, it's very, very much diminished. I can definitely say that with confidence. Is there zero fear of death? No, I'm not gonna just go wantonly scale a building and walk across the edge of the roof for fun. No thanks. But yeah, I really don't have this fear that a lot of people have been living with. So I want to dive into this. So it is a very unpleasant state of being. It is an unpleasant way to experience life. And it is some existential concern of, what is death? What happens after we die? A lot of people have a lot of uncertainty around it. They don't know what happens after. I mean, most of us feel like we don't. So that level of uncertainty is not something most humans are comfortable with. So that alone is something that will induce a great deal of fear for people. And what I think is interesting about the fear of death is I personally feel that it is the fear that is underlying all fear and anxiety in life. Because if we break down all fears and anxieties, even a fear of public speaking is a fear of rejection. It's a fear of not looking good in front of people. It's a fear of looking like an idiot and being rejected, being ostracized. And that goes really deep into our ancestral DNA, because if we were ostracized from the community back in the day, that meant literal death for most people, because good luck surviving out in the jungle by yourself for a long time. I mean, you might be able to for a short amount of time, but the odds of your survival are much lower on your own for an extended period of time than if you're in a clan or a community. So it's a very real thing for the base of pretty much all fears and anxieties that we experience to actually have its root in fear, in death rather. So it actually is a really, really crucial thing for pretty much everyone to address. But, given where the state of the affairs of the world right now, I think it's even more important. And I saw somebody post about it recently, how do I manage this death anxiety? And that really caused me to take a step back and really consider, from my experience and my perspective and my background in psychology and all of this, what is it that has helped me, and what were the different parts of my journey that helped me to really confront it and to kind of release a lot of it, if not all of it. So another interesting thing to note is that death anxiety can actually spike in our 20s and at mid-age, when a lot of people, this is something that's been studied in psychology, it's the middle years and in our younger 20s where we're kind of going through what people would call the quarter-life crisis, the midlife crisis. Midlife crisis, a lot of people are starting to see their parents fade away, to die, so they have this kind of spike in fear of death. But as we age, that actually decreases because we're getting closer to the end of our lives anyway, so we have less fear of what is coming. And maybe at that point in our lives, we've also seen more death naturally. We have been associated with more people who have died throughout our lives. Grandparents, when you get to a certain age, your friends start going. And, these days, unfortunately, we have a lot of tragically young deaths due to chronic disease and stuff like that. So I don't want to call it desensitization, but there is a natural decrease in fear of death as we age. So that might actually comfort some people to know that it will diminish wherever you might be in this moment in time. So I think it's also interesting to just look at the idea that because there's so much uncertainty and fear around it, we often live our lives in a way that we actually pretend it doesn't exist, that it's not affecting us, that it is not potentially right around the corner. And this actually can cause us to turn away from people who are facing death. And because of our own deep-seated fears, we may not even be conscious that we're doing it. But as a cancer survivor and as somebody who is in the cancer community and has heard many, many people discuss this notion of friends disappearing because they're going through cancer, and it seems so awful. It's like twisting the knife a little bit for people who are in the depths of cancer, that their friends start to just disappear on them, family as well. They kind of feel a level of abandonment that is on top of this crazy thing that they're going through. And it's not just cancer survivors. This is just the perspective that I've been given my experience. But I know that this is actually, unfortunately, a relatively common phenomenon where people find that their friends kind of disappear or turn on them and say that they're being a bad friend and stuff like that. But what is really going on is that reflects on that other person's perspective and their situation and their deep-seated fears that they might not even be conscious of. But to watch a friend or a loved one suffer, to watch a friend or a loved one confront death can be way too much for people to handle, because it confronts them with their own mortality and they're not actually ready to face that. So if that has ever happened to you, if you ever find yourself in a situation where you are going through something like a health crisis or an accident and you're really kind of at the brink, if you see that happen in somebody don't take it personally. Actually, if you can muster it, send them a little compassion. But send yourself compassion first and foremost, of course, self-love always, because we have to fill our cups. And self-care isn't selfish, and asking for what you need from others isn't selfish. If you're really, really suffering fear of death and all of this, ask for support, ask for people to be there for you as you navigate these difficult emotions. And they are difficult emotions, so let's not pretend that this is not something to really, really take seriously, because it can cripple a lot of people. But it is fear of the unknown. It is a fear of suffering, medical situations in particular. So, people who are unwilling to confront death, a lot of it boils down to they don't want to think about the suffering that they're going to experience, because death is often associated with tragedy or illness. So the amount of suffering that is associated with death is often what causes people to just want to disassociate from it. And so then there's this fear because it's something that they can't confront. and it just builds up, basically. Interesting, when I was kind of doing a little research to make sure that I had a lot of, enough points to make this a complete video, I found a thread on another video where people were commenting really quite alarming things, in my opinion. Alarming might be a little extreme, but just really heartbreaking. Fear of death makes you want to survive and not live. Yeah, that's pretty bad. And that one got 565 likes and 29 comments on a video with a few thousand views. And I was like, wow, that is really profound and sad, because it really stops you from living if you're really stuck in the depths of this fear. And that is literally the opposite of what we want, because if you're not living, you're dying. And if you are too afraid to go out and live because you're so scared of dying, you're already dying. Here's the thing we have to remember is that every moment that we're alive, we are a moment closer to death. That might be a terrifying thought for a lot of people, but actually, once you get to a certain point, it's quite liberating. And I'll get down to this in a minute, because I will get into strategies to confront these fears. But yeah, I just, this nihilistic perspective of I'm just going to die, so what's the point anyway? This whole life is just a waste. Like, whoa, that is not what we're here to experience. And I guess everybody's on their own path, but I really wish for all that might be experiencing these thoughts and having these thoughts and living with them, for you to shift out of that, for you to actually embrace that depth and move through it, and just get out of that depth of darkness, because that's what we're here to do. We're not here to only experience the bad. We're here to experience all of it. So yes, good and bad, but not just the bad either. Like, life is a miracle, in my opinion. And this is coming from somebody who has confronted death pretty head on at a pretty young age, quarter life crisis in the form of a life-threatening illness. So yeah, and I can laugh about it. So, I've been doing a lot of work to get to this point, and I have been in depths of my own. It's really not something I'm trying to make light of, but at the end of the day, we can all get through it, no matter where we are or where we have been. So being like, this fear of death, this crippling fear of death, is just being locked in a prison of your own making. And we always do actually have a choice. So, the fear can motivate some people, but it can also cause people to avoid what will actually save them. So we want to be really, really aware of when a fear that we have is actually completely crippling us and actually potentially making things worse and bringing death closer to us. So if we're scared of that cancer diagnosis to the point where we put off treatment because we don't want to deal with that, this actually happened to my uncle. He put everything off to the point where it was too late. And it was quite tragic because he was very young when that happened, and it was a treatable cancer. So yeah, it breaks my heart to think about, but he is not alone. Many people do this. They wait until things are so bad that it is too late. I personally also believe that, it's maybe, I don't know, saying never too late is a little bit of a stretch, but people can come back from really devastating, dire situations. I just believe that because I've seen it happen as well. But there is a point where if you don't believe, if you're in this deep darkness of thought processes, if you're in that situation where you are scared of death, and you're probably not as motivated either. So it's a really, really tragic situation to be in, actually, in my opinion. Yeah, so fear of death can actually be dangerous for people. And it can diminish your quality of life as well. So if you're festering in loneliness and regret and, isolation and shame and sadness and fear, what kind of quality of life is that? So are you in a prison of your own making? That is something for you to reflect upon. But meditating on death itself can actually help to diminish the fear of death. So what do I mean by meditating on death? It means actually just confronting the fears and sitting with our mortality and the knowledge that, yes, at a certain point that we don't know right now, we will die. So it seems kind of backwards, but once we actually sit down with it and confront it head on, the fear itself can begin to diminish. And I'm not saying it will happen instantly the first time you do it, or within a short amount of time, perhaps not. But it will. This has been proven as well. So there is hope. And, honestly, like by facing our eventual death and accepting that death is a part of life, it actually better prepares us to live more fully. And if you think about all of these studies of asking people who are on their deathbed, at the end of their life, old or not, what is their number one regret is not saying I love you, not doing, going after that dream job, not, writing the book, not doing the thing that they were dreaming of their whole life, aka not living fully. So it is about living a full life. That is what's going to diminish your fear of death ultimately, because the more fulfilled you feel right now, the more you feel that you're living your purpose, that you're fulfilled and that you're happy, that you're having a full experience of life, the less you're going to fear death, because you know that you are getting everything that you might want to be right now in this moment. So we can bring ourselves to the point of death. Okay, if you are going to die tomorrow and you knew that, are you happy right now? Do you have regrets? Is there something that you wish you would have said or done in your lifetime? These are questions to reflect on yourself, and they're not easy questions, definitely not. But they're very important questions to confront, and then sit with your fear, face it, unpack it. What aspects of death itself are you afraid of? Pain or suffering that leads to the death, or what comes after the death? Is that what you're scared of? Because you don't know what comes after. You're scared of the unknown. There's all sorts of layers and they could all exist, but sit with it yourself and really start to dig in and dive deep. And then consider, what is your level of life satisfaction currently? Do you have a sense of fulfillment? Do you feel like you're fulfilling your purpose? A life well lived, as I was saying, mitigates this death anxiety. But, when we're living a restricted life, avoiding pain by living in a box, that's actually going to amplify the death anxiety. And unfortunately, that's what people have been doing the last year plus, is they've kind of been forced to be stuck in a box. So that's probably amplifying whatever fears they have of death to begin with, on top of the pandemic situation. So it is just piling everything on top of each other. And it's really quite sad, quite horrible. I just quite tragic, honestly. And I think a lot of it could be avoidable if we were getting particular support in this area that I don't see happening at all, honestly. So in order to break through what we would call avoidant behaviors, because if we are afraid of something, we tend to avoid something or anything that would be associated with that. So you might not be living your life fully. So, increase your life satisfaction. What do you enjoy? What will make you feel fulfilled? Do a little bit more of that, even if that just means baking banana bread today or, cooking more, going for a walk around the block. You don't have to do anything crazy, but what will increase your life satisfaction? Even this amount, 2%, 1% even. And then add on to that, add on to that, add on to that. And then you're just going to slowly get more and more satisfied with your life. Magic. And then, what are your values? Experiment with that. What brings you enjoyment? What is important to you? And make sure that your life is actually more aligned with that. Is your life aligned with your values? Are there aspects of fun and joy and pleasure in your life? Bring more of that into your experience, because that's what we're here to do. We're here to experience all of it. So try to find meaning for yourself. And as I was getting into, dissect your fears. Where are they coming from? Are they even your beliefs, or are they beliefs that you took on from society, from your family, so on and so forth? Dissect the dying process, the moment of death, your beliefs on the afterlife, all of that. Go deep into all of it and figure out where the fears originate, where they lie, and where they, might not actually have as strong of a hold as you think they do. The mere fact of talking about it, journaling, express your thoughts on this subject in any way. Talking to somebody is very helpful, but also journaling can be very helpful. It can really bring the sensation of anxiety down, because anxiety is something that we feel in the body, but just merely getting it out of the body can actually help to diminish it as well. So express it in some way. And also, flip the worst case scenario on its head. If there's a specific fear you have around something, flip it on its head. Like, what are the odds you will actually be hit by a car? Really minimal, honestly. What are the odds you will not be hit by a car? Astronomical. So when we actually look at it like that, and even, looking at death figures around this current situation in the world, if we actually look at the figures, they're a lot less devastating than we have been led to believe. And I fully acknowledge that a lot of people have suffered, and it has been a strange thing to watch for many people who have gone through it. But if we actually break it down into the numbers, the statistics actually are on our side as far as us, surviving and not experiencing the very, very dramatic side effects that very few people, they do exist, but very few people, all in all, do experience that dramatic side effect. Dramatic, and that's a very qualified word as well. So I acknowledge that. Perspective is everything, but also, perspective on what can you do to be proactive about taking care of your own health? Because we know underlying conditions are a major factor. So what can you do right now to improve your health, to mitigate your susceptibility in the first place? And that's true for anything. Vitamin D is essential. So, and that's for cancer as well. Every single cancer patient has been deficient in vitamin D. So if you're scared of death, some ways to reduce your exposure to certain major causes of death are simply to just take more vitamin D. They measured that for this current virus as well. Vitamin D is a huge mitigating factor. So make sure you have ample supplies. Ideally, sun. Supplements are great because they help boost it more quickly, but natural, no sunblock before it's too bright and too harsh. Get out there and get the natural form of it. So mindfulness of the present moment. Everything is fine right now.